I know you've taken in a lot of information today. So I want to, at this point, just open up to your questions so I can be sure that I cover what's most important to you right now.
Hey, Alana, it was a lovely session. It's great to have somebody at your level who's trained so many people across the globe, and especially in EO, multiple forums. These people are just being exposed for the first time to the world of forums. What I would love for you to kind of set the tonality is from that side of the world, how do you explain to entrepreneurs who say they do not have the time to dedicate to a forum? Because that's the first thing that comes to a mind of an entrepreneur. What would be your spontaneous instance and reaction to something like that? I've been asking this question to almost all the trainers and facilitators because I want different perspectives to come on board. So when a person listens to it, then it starts resonating and making some sense. So what would be your take on it?
I would say it's the best way to get more time. So I can tell you my story. When I joined EOS, I had a video distribution business and I had a warehouse in New Jersey, and I never had time, right? I had heard about EO, but I didn't have time for that. And one day it was a winter evening and I was sitting in my office like at 10 o'clock at night by myself, and I was trying to, everything was just popping and going crazy. And I was sitting there organizing my desk, hoping if my desk looked organized, I would feel like there was some order in the world. And as I'm doing that, I found the flyer for EO that I'd had sitting there for who knows how long. I thought, well, what the heck? So I called, and it was 10 o'clock at night. I left a voicemail, and somebody called me back the next day, and they said, hey, it just so happens we're having a meeting tonight. Why don't you, come to our meeting, come stop by? And I was like, well, all right, I guess I can stop by for an hour on my way home. So I stopped by, and I kind of thought it would be all these people that would be very serious, and that, and definitely I had imposter syndrome. I felt like I started my business very young. I felt like, oh, they would all be so much smarter and know more than me. So anyway, so I got there and I looked around the room and I was like, okay, well, they're not everybody here is not they're not all wearing fancy suits, or, some of them are just dressed kind of regular. Okay, so I start talking to somebody and he says, do you have a business card? And I was so embarrassed because I looked and I was like, oh, shoot, I didn't bring any business cards. And he was like, oh, shoot, I don't have any business cards either. He's like, well, I can just write down my contact information. Do you have a pen? And I was like, oh, shoot, I don't have a pen. He's like, oh, shoot, I don't have a pen either. And I was like, oh, all right, maybe these are my people. And so I joined on the spot. And I remember the very first meeting that I went to, we were talking about the E-Myth. That was, and it was about how a lot of entrepreneurs just basically have bought themselves a job instead of actually working on just building the business. And I realized it was a ton of bricks hit me. Oh my God, I was so busy because I was working so much in the business. I was like, okay, not doing that anymore. So that was lesson one, meeting one, that was worth everything I paid for the whole year, right? And it just happened like that. Every time I'd have a conversation with somebody, I'd get an extra little nugget. And so it quickly went from being something that was taking up time to something that was giving me back time.
I resonate with it. I was exposed to the world of forums. I shared it with the members about 11 years back. And I was so naive. I was like a frog in a well who decided perhaps I didn't have time for a forum. Now today, I laugh at it, and 6 years down the line in a forum, and I say, wow, I wish I'd become a member then, because it would have impacted my life and changed my way of thinking and altered my way of thinking. Like you said, from thinking that you are the only busy person to suddenly realizing people who have far bigger businesses and are far busier than you still find meaningful sense in the forum. One of our earliest speakers today gave an example of Mukesh Ambani. He's the second or the third richest man in the world. And he's been in a YPO forum for donkey's years, and he finds value in a forum. So one of the busiest people in the world has got time for a forum. So we people are obviously doing things in a wrong manner if we do not take out time. But that's the whole idea of a forum. It kind of throws back things at you and opens your eyes to a different way of thinking, a different way of doing business. Because when entrepreneurs are running businesses, we are so attuned, we become experts at doing what we're doing. But so we think, till the time you're exposed to other experts and you realize, oh dude, I'm a much smaller frog. This guy is doing much bigger business. Or this one has much more amount of intellect. Or There's so much nice things to learn about this person. This person attracts all the human beings with his humble ways. So there is so much to learn. Each time I go to my forum, I learn so much from my forum mates. And there is always something that people can teach. So Alana, if you have to teach people, if they have to identify a forum, because these members are now going to be next looking at which forum to join, and we are trying to map it at the back end, it's a whole different science. But having said that, ultimate choice will be theirs. If you were a member, would you leave any tips behind with the members? How does one select an ideal forum which will bring them the maximum value?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I'm going to say that the basis of this question, the way I'm going to answer this, is the basis of how you choose who you spend your time with in general in life. And it's about having an alignment of values, right? This is not, when you choose people to be in your forum, it's not that you have to be like, oh, I'd want to hang out with this person, right? We'd be friends. Like, that's great if that happens, but that's not where the greatest value is. But what are your values, right? Do you value growth and learning in the same kind of way? Do you value respect in the same kind of way? Will you show up the same way in forum, right? If you really value your growth and learning, and you have somebody who's like, well, I'm kind of here for the social aspect, and they're not going to show up the same way in forum that you do. They're not going to be willing to work as hard as you, to dig internally as deep, right? To really try to get to those spaces and figure out what their blocks are, right? Because what gets in our way of getting ahead is very rarely not knowing how to do something, right? It's usually different beliefs that we have that, identifying what those beliefs are that get in our way, or ways of being, right? Maybe we don't have some self-awareness about how we show up to others. So if you're willing to dig in and figure that out, and you've got somebody that's not, you're not going to be happy, right? And it's the same for people that you're going to spend your life with, people that you're going to hire to work at your company. So making sure that there's an alignment of values, super number one important thing.
My last question to you is, if you can explain to our members, how has forum helped your business grow? Because that's the number one thing that comes. I know we people who understand the world of forums begin to derive more value from a forum in terms of your personal growth, intellectual growth, your overall way of thinking. But people, when they join a forum, somewhere at the back of their mind, it's what value does it bring to my business? So why don't you explain to them, because you met so many people across and you set up so many forums, what value does a forum bring to a business?
Jimmy, you know what? I think those two things are really hand in hand, right? That personal growth actually is super tied in hand with the business growth. Now, there are some very specific things that you learn. So in a forum, I always tell people the personal growth is amazing, and the self-awareness and the happiness, is all that is amazing. And sometimes there are just very tactical and strategic things also, because you have a group of people in that room that have incredible experience, and you want to tap into all of that experience too. So I can tell you, I've had contracts that I've had to write, and I've gotten samples of contracts from my forum members. I've had my forum members read contracts that even an attorney I was paying to write that contract, and my forum members go over it and point out to me problems that were in that contract that I went back to my attorney and had my attorney fix, and it saved my butt, right? In terms of, for me, being able to, even stepping out of running the day-to-day business and being able to get a different strategic way of looking at it helped me grow my business tremendously, brought in more to the bottom line for sure. And I hear that story all the time. I know people that have built, actually, just in New York recently, 2 people that I know in New York just recently sold their business, and definitely attribute their growth to what they learned in their forum.
I completely resonate with you. I'm sure there's some questions here. Can we have the mic? Yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah,
Can we have lights?
It's really interesting listening to you. My question is that, of course, you run into a situation where you need to keep injecting life into the forum so that it stays right up there. But what's your thought? It's a human psychology that, familiarity breeds contempt. And you are with the same group for a long time. and then eventually, in order to fight this entropy, do you believe that it's a good idea to shuffle forums? So there are many forums and you kind of shuffle the members every 3 or 5 years. Would that add more value? I know it's not being done anywhere, but what's your thought on that? And also, I did ask the speaker before that the river being same, but the water keeps changing. And so sometimes you have a purpose for which we are all getting together, and that purpose needs to be sort of resharpened or maybe brought in a new purpose as time progresses, because you are on a different level on the food chain. Even the fill-in forms with you do your check-ins and all that. We do those forms, but eventually you want something new, and the form goes through some revamps. This is what I've seen in some other forum where I have been. So what are your thoughts on that? Is it a good idea to keep changing the style of your forms every 1 year or 2 years? And do you believe in shuffling the forum could perhaps solve this inevitable problem of, familiarity breeding contempt, or getting a law of diminishing returns work upon you?
Kevin, I think those are really super important questions. So thank you for asking those for everybody. I think that it is not necessary to change your forum mates every 3 to 5 years. What happens is if forums don't keep bringing in something new, and also if they don't keep going deeper, right? But I mean, I've worked with forums where they've been together for 10, 12 years. I know of forums that have been together for 20 years. And I've gone in and run a retreat, and at the end of the retreat, they're looking at each other and going, how did I never know these things about you? Right? So somebody coming in with the right tools can keep on making that relationship fresh, right? I mean, think about families that stay together, right? They don't just break up their family, right? They still find new things about each other and still find delight. So I think with forums, you can switch it up 3 to 5 years. I'm not saying not to, but you might be missing some richness there, because there are ways, I think, to keep on delving, and people keep growing. And if that forum is really helping all of the members keep growing, they're not the same people that they were 3 years ago, right? You gotta hope they're really different people in a different space. And in terms of switching up the forums, and this again is something that, it's when I go in and I work with all different groups all around the world, I'm always looking at, okay, what are they doing now? How long have they been doing that? And I'll bring in different forums for them. I'll bring in different update forums to get them to try something new and switch that up a little bit. So I don't think you have to change it every year. But yeah, I think that changing some of your forms around is a good idea.
So Kevin, my take across on these two questions, a forum takes good 2 to 3 years to even mature. I mean, so if you say change it in 5 years, you'll never get the value out of it. It takes a lot of time to open up. I mean, open up is one word and we say it like open up, but believe you me, psychologically, you and I, people to get naked, take a lot of time. Psychologically, not physically. So you take time to understand each other, get to know each other, get invested in each other, then get invested in your family, your kids, your wife. No way on earth the waters are not different, because each time you meet, challenges between 10 people faced are very different. And your challenges, it's a circle of life. It's a tree of life. It keeps going on. So Kevin is on a very high spirit mood. Jimmy's in a very low mood. He'll be in a great mood. Somebody will be in a bad mood. Somebody's on a progressive expansion path. Somebody's on a shutdown path. Somebody sold the company. Somebody aspires to sell a company. So the circle of life keeps going on. Somebody goes through a divorce. Somebody goes through an affair. Somebody goes through this. Somebody has a litigation with the brother. Somebody has a litigation in the family. I mean, forum gives you tremendous value at all points in time just by listening to other people's problems and understanding how many perspectives are there to the problem. So that's one. As far as forum processes are concerned, I completely resonate and agree with you. They should be a work in progress. There can never be one perfect update form. Like today, all of us within the world of forums trainers across are speaking of the emotional state of affairs, because people have realized in an update, we all meet, 5 minutes are given for an update. We just basically do a catching up to do. So where have you traveled? Where have you had this? Birthdays, parties, we discuss that. But that's not an update. The more meaningful update is your emotional state of life. What at DLC we believe is it's a work in progress. It should be crowdsourced. There is nothing like an IP we are creating. So we put a form to use. If somebody has a better suggestion, we implement it. It's a work in progress. It keeps going on and on and on. So there are no words we are patenting. There is nothing what we are trying to say is, this is like when IDEO created design thinking. The process has evolved. You use the process, add value to it, let it be crowdsourced. So for me and DLC, it should be, it's an open source document. You keep making suggestions, keep altering versions of it and seeing what is most effective way. The idea is it should be cutting edge and effective for us to stay engaged and derive value. Because the minute the value is not there, you bounce. Why would somebody be 15 years in a forum or 12 years in a forum or 6 years in a forum and still look forward to a forum meeting? Because the amount of value you derive from it cannot be measured. Like she said, a couple of people have sold their businesses. She's already moved from being a micromanager to a owner and to a board creator, kind of. So you are not that's the whole idea. If you mature in business, how can you go ahead and let go yet grow? Today we are so much into the business that we are not able to grow. We are micromanaging the business and literally holding it hands-on. So when you have more and more examples across the world, it really makes a difference. Alana, lovely speaking with you.